changed her recovery info, intercepted alerts, and kept moving money during the call. That's not panic anymore. So, what was he actually planning?
Miss Mackle, are you authorizing a second loan application right now? I froze. My brother Ethan was still sitting across from me at my kitchen counter holding my coffee mug when the bank said that. The woman on the phone started listing accounts I'd never opened: personal loans, credit lines, transfers, draining the savings I'd spent 4 years building to pay off my student debt. Ethan slowly stood up the second she mentioned fraud investigations. I remember staring at him while he avoided my eyes and reached for his jacket like he could still walk out of there. Then the bank representative asked, "Do you know someone named Ethan Mackle?" He immediately cut in. "Caroline, don't make this a bigger deal than it is." That's when I realized he wasn't denying it. And before I could even answer, the woman on the phone suddenly said, "Ma'am, he's still logged into your account right now." My stomach dropped so hard I had to grab the edge of the counter. "What do you mean he's logged in?" I asked. The woman's voice stayed calm in that rehearsed, customer service tone that somehow made everything feel worse. "There's an active session connected to your profile. A loan application was submitted approximately 6 minutes ago." 6 minutes. Ethan had been sitting in my apartment for at least 20. I looked at him again, really looked at him this time. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't confused. He looked trapped. "Ethan," I said quietly, "what did you do?" He rubbed both hands over his face and let out this irritated breath, like I was inconveniencing him. "Caroline, just listen to me before you freak out. Before I freak out." I had spent the last 4 years living like I was broke, on purpose. Extra shifts. No vacations, no eating out unless it was somebody's birthday. Every paycheck got split with military precision rent, bills, student loans, savings. I drove a car with a busted air conditioner through 2 summers because I wanted my debt gone faster. And now a stranger from my bank was reading off balances I'd never approved while my own brother stood in my kitchen acting annoyed that he got caught. The representative asked me to verify my date of birth and the last 4 digits of my social security number. My voice shook while I answered. Then she said something that made my chest tighten even harder. "Miss Mackle, these applications passed identity verification successfully." I stared at Ethan. That meant whoever did this knew everything. Not just my number, not just my address. They knew employment history, security questions, old account details, things only someone close to me would know. Suddenly, all the weird little moments over the past few months started slamming together in my head. Missing mail, random verification texts, Ethan offering to help organize my paperwork after he moved into my apartment. 3 months earlier, I'd even joked with him about finally getting my credit score high enough to refinance my student loans. I still remembered exactly what he said. "Damn," he laughed. "You've got better credit than people twice your age." At the time, I thought he was teasing me. Now it sounded different. The bank representative continued speaking. "We also detected multiple transfers from your savings account ending in 4,428. My savings account, the one I never touched. I opened my banking app with numb fingers, and the second the numbers loaded onto the screen, I stopped breathing. Nearly everything was gone. I looked up at Ethan so fast my chair scraped against the floor. And instead of apologizing, he actually said, "It was already approved, Caroline." It was already approved, Caroline. I honestly think that was the moment something in me snapped. Not when I saw the missing money, not when the bank said fraud investigation. It was hearing him say it like that, as if approval somehow made it acceptable. "What does that even mean?" I asked. "You used my name." Ethan threw his hands up immediately. "I was going to pay it back." The bank representative stayed silent on the line, listening. That somehow made the whole thing more humiliating. My older brother, 32 years old, unemployed again, sleeping on my couch for a couple weeks, had apparently been borrowing money using my identity while I worked overtime trying to escape student debt. And now a complete stranger was hearing all of it unfold in real time. Ethan started pacing my kitchen. "You're acting like I stole from you." I laughed once. A sharp, disbelieving sound. You drained my savings account. It wasn't drained. I turned the phone toward him and read the balance out loud. That finally shut him up for half a second. The woman from the bank carefully interrupted. Miss Mackle, I need to ask, did you knowingly provide anyone access to your online banking credentials? No, I said instantly. Ethan muttered, Oh my God. That reaction hit me harder than yelling would have. Like, he genuinely believed I was overreacting. Then more pieces started clicking into place. The missing mail I blamed on the apartment office. The credit verification texts that disappeared before I could open them. The afternoon I came home and found Ethan using my laptop at the kitchen table, quickly closing tabs when I walked in. I'd ignored every red flag because he was my brother. Because my parents spent our entire lives teaching me Ethan just needed support. Even when we were kids, consequences somehow never reached him. If Ethan forgot rent money, my parents covered it. If Ethan wrecked a car, somebody else helped fix it. If Ethan messed up, everybody adjusted around him, including me. The representative's voice cut back in. Miss Mackle, there's another issue. I felt my chest tighten again. What now? There was a pause. Then she said, The application submitted today wasn't the first one. I slowly lowered myself into the kitchen chair because my legs suddenly didn't feel stable anymore. What do you mean it wasn't the first one? Across from me, Ethan stopped pacing. The silence coming from him was worse than arguing. The representative began listing dates. One loan opened 5 months earlier. Another line of credit 2 months after that. Then, a series of transfers connected to accounts I'd never seen before. Each sentence felt like another piece of concrete dropping onto my chest. I opened my banking app completely this time and started scrolling through transactions. A truck dealership, online betting charges, electronics stores, late-night cash withdrawals. Thousands of dollars moving out of my account in pieces small enough that I hadn't noticed immediately. My vision blurred. That's where my money went? I asked. Ethan finally looked at me. I was in a bad spot. A bad spot? I repeated. You stole my identity. His face hardened instantly. You had money sitting there while I was drowning. I couldn't even process the entitlement in that sentence. That money wasn't random savings. That was 4 years of skipped vacations. Overtime shifts. Birthdays I worked through. Nights I cried over loan balances while pretending I was fine. And he spent it gambling. The bank representative carefully interrupted before I could explode again. Miss Mackle, I also need to inform you that another personal loan application was attempted this morning under your identity. I looked directly at Ethan. He looked away first. That was the moment I realized this wasn't something he regretted. He was still doing it. While sitting in my apartment, using my Wi-Fi, drinking coffee I paid for. Ethan, I said slowly, were you applying for another loan while I was home? He ran both hands through his hair. I was trying to fix things. By stealing more money? It wasn't supposed to turn into this, but it already had. The representative explained that the fraud department flagged inconsistencies during the live application attempt.
He said he was trying to fix it, but he was literally applying for another loan during the call. So how long was this supposed to continue?
That was why they called immediately instead of sending an email. Then Ethan's entire tone changed. Panic replaced defensiveness. Caroline, don't report this officially, he said quickly. Please. I stared at him. You already reported it, he added, glancing toward my phone. If you keep talking to them, this becomes criminal. The room went completely still. Then the woman from the bank said, Miss Mackle, he's actively moving funds between accounts right now. What? I nearly dropped the phone. The representative's keyboard clacked rapidly on the other end of the line. There's activity happening in real time. Funds are being transferred from the newly opened credit line. I looked straight at Ethan. His face lost color instantly. Ethan, I whispered, are you seriously still logged into my account? I can explain. No. No. You don't get to say that anymore. He grabbed his phone off the counter so fast it almost slipped out of his hand. That movement alone told me everything. The bank representative immediately spoke again. Miss Mackle, for your protection, I recommend you do not allow him access to any devices connected to your financial accounts. My entire body started shaking, not just from anger anymore, from the realization that this had been happening while I slept in the next room, while I trusted him inside my home. Every strange moment over the past few months suddenly made horrible sense. The missing bank statements, the verification emails I never received, the time my password mysteriously stopped working and Ethan casually suggested maybe the app was glitching. He had been intercepting everything, planning around me, watching me. I only needed time, he said desperately. I was gonna put the money back after I got ahead. You gambled it away. His jaw tightened because he knew I'd seen the transactions. Then he switched tactics instantly. You're really gonna do this to family? That sentence hit harder than yelling. Because even now, even after stealing my identity, draining my savings, and opening loans in my name, he still expected me to protect him from consequences. The representative asked me to confirm whether I wanted to proceed with a formal fraud escalation. Ethan stepped closer immediately. Caroline, think about this. I backed away from him. For the first time all night, I actually felt afraid of him. Not physically, but afraid of how completely he'd justified destroying my future. The representative continued carefully. If confirmed as fraudulent activity, this case may be referred for criminal investigation. Ethan went quiet, completely quiet. Then the woman paused for a moment and said something that made the air leave my lungs. Miss Mackle, several of the recovery contacts on your accounts were changed months ago. Changed to what? I asked. The representative hesitated briefly before answering. An email address and phone number connected to Ethan Mackle. I closed my eyes. That was it. That was the final piece that made everything collapse into something undeniable and intentional. This wasn't one desperate mistake. It wasn't one loan taken during a bad month. Ethan had spent months building access to my life, piece by piece, rerouting alerts, intercepting verification codes, changing recovery information, and quietly using my identity like it belonged to him. All while living in my apartment. All while eating dinner with me, joking with me, listening to me talk about finally paying off my student loans. I opened my eyes and looked at him. And for the first time since the call started, he looked scared. Not guilty. Scared. Caroline, he said quietly, please don't do this. I remember laughing again, but this time it sounded exhausted more than angry. Do what? I asked. Tell the truth? The bank transferred me directly to their fraud department. They locked the accounts while I was still on the phone and started documenting every transaction tied to my identity. The investigator explained they could already see digital records linking the applications to Ethan's devices and IP addresses. The entire time, Ethan just stood there in silence. No more excuses. No more speeches about family. Because he finally understood this wasn't something he could talk his way out of. And then came the part that hurt worse than the money. The investigator asked me whether I wanted to officially state that the applications were unauthorized. I looked at my brother standing in my kitchen and realized he had fully expected me to protect him, even after everything. That was the moment I understood how long this had probably worked for him in life. People cleaning up his damage, people staying quiet, people sacrificing themselves so he wouldn't face consequences. Not this time. Yes, I said. They were unauthorized. Ethan looked down at the floor immediately. The investigation moved fast after that. The bank recovered security footage from one of the branches where documents had been submitted. Fraud analysts traced login activity directly to Ethan's phone and laptop. They uncovered nearly 8 months of fraudulent activity tied to my name, personal loans, credit lines, financing accounts, and attempted borrowing that totaled far more than the savings he already took. And the worst part? He knew exactly what that savings account was for. A week before the first transfer, I'd shown him my student loan balance dropping below $10,000. I was proud of it. I remember smiling while telling him I could finally see the finish line. That's the account he targeted. My parents reacted exactly how I feared they would. At first, they begged me not to continue cooperating. Then they blamed me for ruining Ethan's life. My mother actually asked me whether I could work something out privately after criminal charges became possible. Meanwhile, I was the one spending hours filing identity theft reports, freezing my credit, changing every password I had, and trying to repair the financial damage he caused. For months, my credit score tanked. Debt collectors called me constantly before the fraud claims fully processed. I barely slept. But eventually the evidence became impossible for Ethan to deny. He accepted a plea deal that included probation, restitution payments, and long-term financial monitoring. Most of the fraudulent debt was removed from my name after the investigation closed. I moved apartments 3 months later, changed banks, locked my credit permanently, and I stopped speaking to Ethan completely. The last thing I remember feeling wasn't revenge, it was relief. Because one night after everything ended, I reopened my student loan account alone in my new apartment. The savings were still gone, the balance was still there, but for the first time in months, every account on the screen belonged to me again. And honestly, that felt worth more than the money he stole.
The scary part isn't somebody stealing your identity, it's realizing how easily someone close to you can slowly position themselves to do it. How many people notice before everything's already gone?